Hello and good evening, everybody, and thank you very, very much for joining us this Thursday evening. My name is Ian Harkins, and I'm joined by my colleague, Jesse Anderson-Lehman. Thank you very, very much for being here. He and I are going to present for the next hour or so on our Inside the AP's presentation that we've given now for about a year or so, and we're really delighted to bring to you tonight. So a little bit about who Jesse and I are. I'll go first. My name is Ian Harkins. I have been with Appleruth for over a decade now as a tutor, as a content creator, as one of the managers in New York. And aside from SAT, ACT, what I spend most of my time with Appleruth doing is subject prep. My AP area of specializations are the history tests, really all of them, and then some of the language ones, so particularly French, Spanish, both the language and the literature ones. And I've been doing those since I began with Appleruth. And I've been with the APs as they've gone through different twists and turns of different formattings, and I've stuck with students along the way. It's been really, really fun actually getting to do those. Jesse, would you mind as well introducing yourself and telling all the folks out there what it is you do?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name's Jesse Anderson-Lehman, and I've been with Appleruth a little over 9 years, 9.5 years. Working on a lot of different things, SAT, ACT, GRE, kind of standardized test prep, but then in the context of APs, working primarily with more of the STEM-focused APs. So working with AP Chemistry, AP Physics, AP Statistics, also AP Calculus. And yeah, so I'm kind of here to offer a little bit more on the STEM side of things in terms of that sort of focus. And yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Jesse is already being modest in how many different subjects he can tutor. He is a ridiculously well-versed Renaissance man, and we're very, very lucky to have him. But yes, between the two of us, if you've got any specific AP questions, we should be able to address them. The format of what I'd love to do is to begin with some pre-prepared questions that we very often get and that we'd love to initiate the conversation with between Jesse and myself and direct it that way. And then I will save some time at the end for questions. Plenty of time to try to address everything that you've got. If we don't get your questions by the end, feel free to send them to us afterwards, and we'll be happy to pass them off to anybody who can answer them for you. So again, a little bit about who we are at Appleruth. Our why of why we do this is that we firmly believe as a company that when you change student self-beliefs, you are able to change their lives. And we do this through our three pillars of academic tutoring, test prep, and executive function coaching. These are the ways that we help bolster students' lives. And it is that middle pillar, test prep, that brings us to our presentation today. This is by far and away the most common question that we get, even at this stage in the academic calendar. Help, I'm not taking enough APs, or I'm taking too many APs. Now what? I'll take the prerogative and answer this question first then, Jesse. It is a very, very real anxiety about feeling like the APs are yet another chance to prove yourself. They are another rite of passage for a lot of high schoolers. And what I would like to start off today with is just reminding everybody something that hopefully we already know. APs are a way of highlighting for colleges and universities what it is that you might like to study at a college level. This is not to say that you need to go in and take every single AP that there is. You do not need to, drive yourself academically in order to take every single AP that even your high school might offer. This is so that you can highlight and build a portfolio, a package for yourself that correctly highlights to colleges and universities, here's the type of student that I am. Here are where my interests lie. Here's my area of expertise, and I'm already at a good enough level where I can place out of something. That's the second pillar of what an AP can do. It can help accelerate you to a higher level once you get into a course. And so maybe it can be easier to complete the requirements for a major or a minor once you're at college. In my specific case, it also helped me to finish my university one semester early. So instead of going for 4 full years, I was able to finish my requirements in 3.5 years. Some colleges and universities allow for that as well. But please, as you think about structuring your APs, do remember that in the end, they're not tick boxes like they are for a lot of other things that colleges and universities are looking for. This is meant to highlight you as an individual student, what your academic life has been like. Jesse, sorry that I took the mic. I stole the microphone from you, but you've got some. I mean, not to lead the witness, but you have, I think, some really interesting ideas that come from your personal experience as well about your the APs that you took and your theory on the case. Do you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so you're absolutely right. I think that APs are one tool in your toolbox for kind of, giving colleges an idea of who you are as a student. And so it's about signaling to colleges, these are the things I'm interested in. It's about building a sort of narrative about who you are and what your interests may be. And that's something that you need to think of holistically, because it's not a matter of like colleges looking at two applicants and thinking like, well, this one has 16 APs and this one has 14 APs. We're going to take the one with 16. And those are two ridiculous numbers, by the way. I don't know why I chose those. Those are way too high. But like, it's not a competition of who had the most APs. It's a matter of putting yourself in a position so that you can demonstrate the things that are important to you. And so like I did have a lot of experience with this. I mean, I was in a school where I had the opportunity to take a lot of APs. The ones I listed before: AP Calculus, AP Chemistry, AP Physics, AP Statistics, but I also took AP English Literature, AP English Language, Microeconomics, US Government, Computer Science. I'm probably forgetting a couple more too. I tried the AP Spanish test when I had only done Spanish 3, which was a terrible idea because I did not really speak Spanish. So that was whatever grader got my test had a really fun time with that one. But in the end, I would say, if anything, I ended up taking too many, because one of the things that actually set me apart was actually I was a band kid. And I mean, I did a ton of work. I mean, I was in band, I was in marching band, I was in jazz band. And those were things that in the end, when I got to Northwestern, I went to Northwestern for my undergrad, and I continued with those things. I mean, all 4 years that I was at Northwestern, I was doing concert band, I was doing marching band. I had aspects of my sort of life that were part of who I was as a person in high school, that I like to think were part of what made my application unique and special when I applied to Northwestern. And so it's, you want to take as many, APs as you're comfortable with. You want to take as many APs as you're interested in, but you don't want to take them at the detriment of other opportunities. Like, at some point you want to take a step back and ask yourself, like, what does my day look like? Especially, like, I run into this with seniors, where like seniors might set themselves up with like a really ambitious AP structure, and they're really looking to take a ton of APs. And it's like, well, are you interested in all these things? Is this the way that you want to be spending time your senior year? Like, there's a point where maybe the marginal return on taking another AP class, I don't want to say that it's necessarily decreasing, but it certainly is. Like, it's a matter of your personal story and your personal narrative of who you are. So one of, there's situations where I want to encourage students to push themselves, to try something more, to really have that extra thing on their application. But there's also places where I want to tell students to like take a step back and recognize that like it's an AP course is a big commitment. You're going to be spending, if you're taking the class in school, you're taking the whole year working on that course. I mean, right now I'm working with a lot of AP students who are taking midterms, and they're having to work really hard getting ready for midterms right now. So you want to keep that all balanced and think about why am I here? What am I trying to accomplish? And what am I interested in letting colleges know about me? So,
Jesse, there's something that I love that I want to hold up of what you are saying here, because we have the distinct advantage now of being able to give this talk in December. So this is a fantastic time where if you're in an AP specific course, or if you're in a course that is adjacent to an AP curriculum, you have done half the year, you're getting through to the midterms, and you can start to decide like, okay, do I want to really take the AP course? And something that I think is a brilliant question to maybe help head off some of the anxiety about what this question is addressing is, what does your second semester look like? You talked about band, and I think all of what we're doing here is in different ways trying to highlight, I don't want to say pre-packaged because that sounds so trite, but to highlight the interests, the things that you'll bring to your college experience. And whatever the AP is that you are studying for, it will take extra time. It necessarily has to, because once you get to the end of the AP curriculum content, it then will take quite a lot to go back and review the entire year. And, this happens extremely rarely, but there was one student that I had last AP season who I'm thinking about. And again, I have to stress, this is an incredibly rare instance. But this was quite a high achieving athlete, tennis player, who competed weekends at tournaments he would have to travel to, played for a team, and then additionally played for his high school team. So would compete individually and competed in two different leagues. And spring was the busy season for him. And when you asked him, why is he doing this? Because tennis was such an important facet of what he hoped to bring to colleges and universities come his application, which is a fantastic thing to do. He was passionate about it. He was great at it. But we cannot swoop in and after a few hours make everything dandy with an AP test prep. We will very, very much work with you. We'll point you in the right directions. But that was an example of a student who had not built in the time to actually devote to this AP, and who chose in the end not to take the AP. Now, I'm not saying everybody, you're in band, you're doing tennis, don't even think about doing the AP. That's not at all I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the time is now to start to structure your second semester year to allow for this extra time. The earlier that you plan it, the less stressful it's going to be, and the more that you can do all those things. Believe me, Jesse's band is like absolutely part of him. A lot of my high school experience involved theater. My goodness, I loved it. It was an integral part of my application to university. But we both managed to find the time to do APs as well. Jesse, have I said everything that I need to about this section? Do you think, have I omitted anything egregious?
Right. I think that's right. And I mean, one of the ways that we know that this is the case, that there's not some magical number that's the right number of APs, is the fact that it varies from school to school. And so keep in mind that like it depends on the opportunities you have as well. So I certainly don't think, I mean, especially if you're at a school that does not offer as many AP options, or they don't fit in your schedule the way that you want them to, you know, keep in mind that colleges have a pretty good handle on this. They recognize that this varies from school to school, and that, you know, it's not like everybody gets the opportunity to take all the APs. So that's one of the ways that you know that this is something that can vary from case to case, and it needs to be something that you think about, within your own context of what you're trying to do in high school. So.
Very, very nicely said. I'm gonna move us on. How do I know if my AP class is on track for the exam? Yeah, Jesse, how do I know if my AP class is on track for the exam?
Well, it's interesting because we're getting to midterm time, and it's funny. I've got for whatever reason I've got several AP calculus students going right now that are all at radically different parts of the AP calculus curriculum. And it's just funny. It's like some different classes run different ways, and different teachers run classes in different ways too. And this is one of the things to keep in mind is that it varies a lot. Teachers have autonomy in their own classrooms. A lot of AP teachers are very experienced, so they may have reasons they do things in certain ways, or that they pace the class based on the environment that they're teaching within. When it comes down to it, though, at the end of this class, if you're planning on taking the AP exam, there is an exam, and you have to have all the content. You have to have everything that you need in order to take that exam. So I mean, right now we're still early, so I think that there's a little bit more variance in terms of where your class may be. But if you want to check, uh, College Board is very good about having freely available public resources online that can help you very quickly make sense of the way that your course is structured, right? So like if you have a teacher that doesn't do a very good job of having a schedule or having a syllabus or kind of outlining the way that the course content lays out for your AP class, go online. Go, if you go and you Google AP Physics 1, then the first thing that'll pop up is the AP Central page for AP Physics 1 with College Board. And on that page, you can see a list of all the units that need to be covered over the course of the year. You can go and open up a course and exam description and see a 200-page document that lists all the learning, all the learning guidelines, all of the desired outcomes, all of the potential tests, question types, like all that information is available. And it's one of the first things you can do when you start transitioning into your prep for the exam, is you can start pulling up that list on the College Board website and looking and saying, okay, how have we done so far? Are we kind of following the path that is outlined in the course and exam description? Have we followed through? Does it look like unit 1, unit 2, unit 3 looks like the same order that we went through in class? Where are we? Have we made it through? Are there 7 units and we've made it through 3 or 4 of them? Are we still in unit 2? Are we further? You can start to take a little bit more ownership of like where you are in that path toward the final amount of content. Because this is something too that, like, if you're in an AP class, there's a certain expectation that they're going to get through all the AP material and get ready in time for the exam. But it's also true that, like, I've worked with students who are taking advanced topics courses that are not technically AP, but that are often AP adjacent, that may have slightly different goals. Or if you are taking a course that is technically like a dual enrollment class that's connected with a college or something like that, you may find that, like, it's important to remember that a lot of people come from a lot of different contexts when they're going to take AP exams. And because of that, there's a lot of information available online in terms of giving you an idea of where you are. And I mean, this is a great time, like here at midterms, talk to your teacher about it. Like if you're starting to think about, okay, I want to kind of, and you should, obviously if you're taking midterms right now, then you're probably already thinking like, oh man, I've got to remember all that stuff we've learned all year. Like I've got to make sure that I can actually, answer those questions and do what my teacher's asking me. Talk to your teacher and be like, okay, how can I get, ready for my midterm? But also I want to start thinking about getting ready for the AP exam. You can start having that conversation because your teacher is your ally, right? Like as you start going through this process, I have much more success with students who are talking with their teachers, who understand where the class is headed, who are able to understand what the teacher's kind of goals are. You can learn a lot by just having them as a resource right from the beginning. Because yeah, there's a lot that goes into how a teacher plans a course, whether they're using all AP style questions from the beginning, whether they're trying to scaffold things more and work from a sort of more basic foundation. Those are conversations you can be having with your teacher. So
I struggle to add anything that's worthwhile to that really, really thorough answer. Yeah, Jesse. I think it's so true that the College Board, the company that administers the AP, has gotten a real sort of open and honest kick about what it is their demands are, and they've shared the syllabi really freely. Yes, they say they give it to teachers, but you can easily access whatever it is your syllabus is on the College Board website. And you know, these are the guidelines for teachers. So it's not like every single lesson will match week by week. We want different teachers to work at different paces according to their interests. That is very much part and parcel of what makes a great class. But yes, for you at this point, maybe over the winter break, it can certainly be worthwhile to look at the College Board website and maybe check mark or see where it is that you've gone. If your teacher has handed out a syllabus as well for their own class, which is very common in AP level classes in high school, have a look at where you have gone and have a look at where indeed you are going as well. All right. How should I plan out my study program? I suppose I threw you under the bus last time, Jesse, so I'll take this one. Yes, a really, really good question to be pre-planning now. We haven't even gotten to the second semester part. Midterms are a really good pulse check. If you're indeed doing midterms now, a lot of my students are doing them in January as well. I think that right now there are two prongs that we can start to sense for any AP course. I just did a language one, so I have AP language on the brain, but forgive me if I use this as an illustration. So something that you can start to think about in your study program is that there's two competing tracks, as I said. One is the actual content. Do I know all of the formulas that I need to know for chemistry, for physics? Do I know all of the dates and events that I'm expected to so far in my history course? The parallel track is that I think now would be a good time to start looking at the formatting as well for the AP tests. The one that I'm thinking about is always strange. For the AP Spanish test, there is a section where you need to be able to answer an email. It's specifically an email. And you need to be able to address the speaker in whatever level of formality or familiarity that the email demands. You need to know how to sign off. You're expected to fully write the thing as if it's an email. What a very strange assignment that is. There are other things for the history ones. There are three different, for the most history ones, there are three different types of essays that you're supposed to write: a short one, a long one, and one that looks at documents. And they each have their own subtle different demands of you. And that's not to mention any multiple choice things. So when you are doing all of these midterms, any tests, any assignments, I think now is really a worthwhile time to also look out for, am I being assigned stuff that coincides with what I'm expected to be able to do on the test. So that's something that I should say look out for. In the second semester, in the spring semester, of course, I would advocate working with somebody, but be that a tutor, be that another mentor, be that a study group, but something that you can start to get together so that you can have other people to write with, to study with, other people who can maybe read your answers. It's not terribly challenging to self-grade essays these days, because you can find past essays and then you can find scoring rubrics for them. And you really can check, like, did I do this bit? Yes. Did I give them this answer? Yes. So these are very, very much things that you can start to do. And then I would also say, let me conclude by saying, start to plot out what actually do the months of the second semester look like. Are you going on a trip anywhere? Do you have any big sports, band commitments, anything that you can start to predict and work around? That is something that I think that right now is a really, really worthwhile question. Have a look at the AP calendars. They're out now, so we can know which tests are going to be when and when you can study for, especially if you're taking more than one. Sorry, Jesse, I talked and talked for a long while, and oftentimes you give better answers than I ever did. So, but I mean, how do you? We're in December now. Things are kind of early. Do you prescribe things like at this month you should be doing this month start thinking about that? Are there sort of goals along the way for you, do you think?
So yeah, I mean, it varies. I mean, I think that's ultimately what, like, if there's one thing that I've learned more than anything working with students getting ready for APs is that every student's different, every class is different, and that means that, like, everybody's plan is going to look a little different too. Because yeah, it's a split. Like, you want to make sure you're thinking about the contents, what we were talking about, like going through a list of material and making sure that you've got all the content areas. You like, yep, that unit I kind of was pretty good at. This unit, oh, there was something I forgot, I need to remember that. But also thinking about, like, looking at free response questions, starting to get a sense for what those scoring guidelines look like, where your points going to come from, all of that. You can start to familiarize yourself with the test and start to understand what the structure of the test looks like too. It's kind of a content but also a format. Like, those are the kind of two sides that we're looking at. But I mean, often what I will find is that for students who are, you know, struggling a little bit and are having trouble remembering, like, from unit to unit, maybe your students, maybe you're somebody who, like, as you learn a new topic, you struggle to remember the old one. It's out of sight, out of mind. So you kind of take the test and then you move on to the next one and you take the test and go on. For those students, I'll often lay out pretty comprehensive content review, going back through maybe something like a Barron's Guide, or working through things with Khan Academy or other online resources to try and make sure that a student is reminded of the content they've gone over and is continuing to hit it pretty consistently. And then those study plans look pretty much like, you have to start, March, February, March. You're really getting your way into content review and making sure that you've got sustained practice over a long term. But then for other students, if students have a little bit, better working memory and are able to remember the content they've worked on, sometimes it's much more about, like, going and taking a practice test. Like, start taking practice tests early and often. That's like the number one rule in test prep, is that the more you practice it, the better it's going to turn out when you do it for real, right? I mean, that's true in a lot of things in life, and it's certainly true with AP exams, is that if you can go and do some practice free response questions and kind of get a sense for what those start to look like, then maybe for that kind of student, it ends up being more about making sure that they're understanding the nuances of how those questions are formatted and what people are really looking for when in those questions. But yeah, it's like it varies a lot, but it is a good time to start thinking about what this study program looks like. And then, especially because with the winter break, I think it's a good time to, like, think about it, start to put together a schedule, but then really kind of take a break, get your mental reset a little bit over the winter holidays, and then come back in January into February and kind of start implementing those plans. So,
And I agree with you. I think February, March is when we start to work quite a lot with students. And I think that that is a reflection of, that's a good time now to start thinking about what the first semester had content-wise for whatever the topic was. And then also to start working with, as I think both of you and I mentioned, start working with those specific demands that each test has in its different formatting, its nuances. By end of March, April-ish, I think that that is a good time to target a full practice test. And there are plenty out there. Jesse, you mentioned Barron's. Love me some Barron's. I think that they put together some pretty decent practice tests overall for a lot of different topics. But the College Board also puts out at least one full practice test for every year. And then Khan Academy has specific questions as well that you can practice. You can find past exams that you can practice with. The internet is awash with different practice exams for these. So that's a really, really good way to start doing that. When should I start reviewing with a tutor or on my own? I kind of just mentioned that, but February, March, and the reason is as well, like that's a good time to take that do I mean litmus test, to take stock of how it is you've done the previous year. And there is a lot, meaning the previous semester, there is a lot of content still that you are expected to remember and bring through. The courses are plenty well connected, so you're expected to bring through to the second semester. And if you start to do it February, March, then that gives you 2 months to start doing this. So do it. Listen, I do it with one of the two of us, or do it with a teacher, do it with yourself, do it with classmates. But I think that now, once you hit February, March, April is a little bit late to sort of comfortably do it, but people can cram a little bit more then. But I would say February, March. Am I right, Jesse? I think so.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think like, and that certainly is. I mean, we can say as tutors that that's kind of the way that our flavors of AP tutoring start to shift. Is right now it's very much like like midterm prep, and also just like subject prep. So helping students with what they're working on in their classes. And then as we start to get into the new semester, January into February into March is when it's that the tutoring starts to shift more toward exam prep and more specifically looking to prepare for the AP exams. And yeah, that makes sense. I'm a big fan of sustained practice over a long period of time. I find that a little bit over a long period of time works a lot better than a lot in a little bit of time. That if students try to wait till the last minute and try to do it all at once, that just isn't going to be quite as effective. Not to mention the fact that you'll find that your teacher, if you're taking an AP class, your teacher will probably backload quite a bit of exam prep into those last couple weeks leading into the test. So that's going to be, that ramp up is going to happen naturally as part of your class. It's nice if you already have a little bit of on your own, either with a study group or with a tutor or with online resources. It's good to have that started like February, March, and kind of have that pattern already in place so that you're ready for that ramp up as you head into the exams.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. What are AP graders looking for? Jesse, you've taken more APs than people know exist. What's your secret? What do AP graders possibly look for?
Yeah, I mean they're looking for a lot. I mean they have every single year when AP graders get together and get ready to grade AP exams, they meet and there are, a combination of things that they're looking at. They're looking at uh on the multiple choice questions, of course, that's multiple choice. I mean, you're there we're not as, that's not quite as interesting in the context of this question, but for free response questions, they're looking for, they have a point structure, and every single exam is a little bit different. So depending on whether you're doing AP physics or AP chemistry or AP statistics or AP calculus, there's all of those free response questions have scoring guidelines that outline what the graders want to see students hit. And what's funny about that is that the things that those scoring guidelines say are important are sometimes different from what students think is important. Because a lot of students will think very confidently, like, well, I don't have a shot at this question. I have no idea what they're asking me. I don't even know where to go. So like, why am I even bothering? Like, I can't, like, and they'll skip a part of a question or they won't even try. But when you go look at the scoring guidelines, there might be 4 points for that question. And two of those points were for a very simple derivation early, like in some early step in the process. Something that the student might discount entirely because they think, oh, that's obvious. Like I knew how to do that. Well, yeah, graders are trying to give you points for the things that you know how to do. And yes, there will also be parts of free response questions that are more reach, that are things that not everybody's going to know, that you're going to have to struggle to hit. But the when I work with students, what I find is that the difference between a 3 and a 5 isn't necessarily whiz bang content knowledge. It's being able to pick up the partial credit and hoover up the points along the way. Because that partial credit, getting those points along the way, the simple stuff that you know and that you just need to practice and get down on paper that's where the score really gets made. And then at the top end, there's some consideration for, like, graders like to be able to see that, to feel like you know what you're doing and to feel like they understand what you are putting down on the page. There's a certain way of formatting your work, a certain way of formatting the way you present your work. There's a certain way, kind of like speaking the language of the exam, that makes it easy for a grader to know where to give you your points, right? Make sure your work is organized, make sure it's clear, make sure that you are showing all of your steps, and that will make a grader confident that, like, this person is following through. And then if you miss something at the end, then yeah, they'll count off that point on the scoring rubric, but you'll have gotten the other 3 or 4 points along the way. And so that's, ultimately, when it comes down to this, it's about answering the question that's asked and doing it in a way that's like that shows your content knowledge along the way. So
Come on, yes. I'm getting all I'm getting all impassioned, but yes, what are AP graders looking for? I would argue something. Write down something. And your point is so well taken that sometimes students go like, oh, I can't possibly see my way to answering this question all the way through. That's not true. You can write down something for it. And for every one of these questions, I think all of the APs have some version of some free response written answer. Yes, there are ones that are binary. It's A and not C or something, but all of them have something where you have to write something down. And for all of them, you have different points awarded for different accomplishments, different stages. So please, goodness, like, train yourself even in situations as Jesse outlines, like, oh, I've never heard of this thing. You write down something. I come across this all the time in the history ones. Um, even if you don't specifically know the moment being referred to, you are able to write down something about the area, the time period, the speaker, whoever it is. I get on my high horse because if um if students are asked, I was just asked this question, so I'm going to use it, but I have AP Euro as well on the brain. Students were asked a question. The Renaissance was a time of great cultural shifting. What is an example that shows this? And the student wrote an answer that is something that shows this was the shifting in Italian art during the time. And that was it. That was all the student gave. And this is a moment where I can illustrate, like, that's not enough. What you think is maybe obvious, like, oh, everybody knows, surely this grader knows everything that there is to know about how Italian art transitioned and what the different rules were, who the different funders were in from the Middle Ages to what we think of as the Renaissance. Like, please, we need to hear you say it. These questions are chances for you to show off what it is you know. And there are many, many different answers that you can give. Like, maybe this is less true for some of the STEM ones, but I really love teaching some of the history things because inevitably students who have learned different things with different teachers and maybe have had different things highlighted over the course of the year as are relevant to current events, perhaps, or different bits of the course pop out for them in different ways. I am constantly given like brand new answers to questions like I never even thought of. There was a marvelous question that somebody answered for me. The question was on the A push, and I've been doing this question for genuinely half a decade, and I've had it with dozens of students. And the question was something about, with the advent of the Industrial Revolution and increased leisure time, how did life change for people? So I'm used to answers about family structure, about gender roles. This person wrote a marvelous answer about sports and how organized sports became a thing in the second half of the 19th century. How baseball league, that's when you start to see boxing become a supreme interesting sport in the States. That's where what would become the MLB. It's not long after that you see the foundation of the NHL, of college sports, of stadiums and ticket sales and all that. And it was just such a great answer that I had never considered before. So point being, I get very excited about this, sorry. Point being, like, there isn't a cookie cutter, like this is the exact answer we're looking for in all situations. There can very, very easily be something that you feel confident in and that will be an incredibly relevant answer. They're deliberately open-ended. So please write down something. All right. Whew. I worry I've droned on for too long, and I do want to save time for questions. Jesse, is there anything else that I should be adding before we get to the Q&A?
Well, I totally agree, and I think it does work more in the STEM than people realize. Though it is more confined in the on the STEM side of things. It's again, I think the trick is recognizing what the shape of the questions and what the shape of like successful answers are is something that you're only going to get through practice and by looking at scoring guidelines and having an understanding of the types of questions you're getting asked. Like in physics, there's very specific free response questions. There's a quantitative qualitative translation task. There's an experimental question that you have to do. There's a paragraph short answer question where you have to like write everything out longhand in a paragraph and outline like the physics in sentences rather than doing it using math. Knowing these things ahead of time and being prepared for them is really important because if you know what the type of question is and you know how to format your answer, then that will allow you to be creative in giving your response to the fullest of your ability. But that's something that only comes once you know what the test format is like and feel comfortable with it. And yeah, those keep in mind too that like when you're working on a like a quiz in class, if you miss a problem, you feel bad, you lose a point, your score goes down. We're so used to aiming for hundreds in like in problem in classes. When you're on the AP exam, it's the opposite. You're trying to accumulate points. Nobody's going to get it perfect. That's not the goal, is for everybody to get everything perfect. So, a 3 could be very well just, showing that competency. A 4 is showing a little more advanced competency. A 5 is showing stellar competency, but even a 5 didn't get everything right. And so give yourself the space to miss some stuff along the way. You can still get a really good score.
Yeah. I took the Calc BC test back in the day. And for the final question, I drew a smiley face with a speech bubble saying thank you, because it was way too hard for me. But I still managed a 4 out of that. So yes, it is not as though you need to answer every single question correctly. Okay. So I'm opening up properly now for questions and answers in the time that we have left, while people are mulling over questions that you might have. While you're thinking, I want to give an idea of some of the offerings that we also do. Again, we are Appleruth. The 3 pillars of what we do are academic, subject tutoring, test prep, and executive functioning coaching. And I want to make everybody aware of the things that we offer as well. You can reach us at the phone number here, but I want to make people aware that this is our season of giving. If you refer somebody to us, then we'll give you an hour as well of free tutoring for a topic of your choice. Just make sure that they mention your name when they enroll. We offer executive functioning coaching. So this is habits that are academically geared to help students and help anybody in an academic setting better instill habits that can lead to success. And we also have our writing workshop that we are really, really proud to announce. So with all that said, I'd love to get to some of the questions. Some of them I have been trying to handle beforehand and address as we've gone along. This is a question that we get a lot of in different ways. The question says, what's a decent number of APs for Harvard? I think we can, if I can rephrase your question a little bit, what is a number of APs that is typical? That number has risen. I think for some of the elite colleges and universities, the number that is bandied about is 8 APs. I did not take 8 APs, and I was very happy with where I went. However, again, the number of APs that you take are a reflection of the opportunities afforded to you in your high school. And colleges, universities are very aware of that. So I don't think it is particularly instructive to say, here's how many APs that you have to take. It is, what did you take advantage of that was offered to you in your high school? And what can you demonstrate that you did throughout your high school tenure? APs are funny. They're not like the SAT, ACT, where everybody sort of tackles it at some point junior, maybe senior year. These are offered throughout, starting in 9th grade. So again, APs are used as a tool to tell a story about you, your academic life, and what it is you're interested in. And as well, what level of rigor at your high school you were able to take advantage of. Is that a fair way of assessing that, Jesse?
Yeah, well, and I'm really happy. There's a couple people who are coming in with other questions that piggyback right off of this. So, one of these is like, what do colleges like, dual enrollment or AP? Which one
Hmm.
is better? It completely depends on like what you are being offered in your high school environment, and what your goals are. Like, I think that AP reads a little bit more as like a like composed package in a known quantity for especially higher level universities is when you apply to like when you apply to a university and you have an AP class that you took, they know what that means. Whereas sometimes if you take like a community college dual enrollment course, it may not be as entirely clear what that, and in both situations, if it's something that you're interested in, you're going to major in it anyways. They may make you retake the class so that you can take their version of whatever that subject was anyways. So don't get too hung up on that unless you're in a situation where like you can see a really concrete connection. Like if I take this dual enrollment course, it is within the state university system of Georgia. It will give you credit at the University of Georgia for this class. Like if you want to play that game, that's a little bit different, but I'd say it's a bit of a toss up. And same with like another question of like, if your school doesn't offer AP classes, are you docked in applications for elite colleges for not taking AP tests? Absolutely not. I no. You take what's available to you, take advantage of the opportunities that you have, extend yourself in ways that make sense for you to extend yourself, but don't bother, don't feel like I only had an opportunity to take two APs. Ian just said 8 APs is the number that gets bandied about. Am I just never going to have a chance? No, that's not. Colleges are very aware of where you're coming from and what your high school will have available, and especially if that's something you're thinking about, then write about it in your college essay. What a great thing to talk about. Like I felt like I was struggling to find places to really exert myself and show the things that I cared about in high school. Talk about that in your essay and make it part of your application. So
Oh, that was a lovely. Yeah, sorry. I mean, when I say 8 APs, I hope I qualify. I hope I
you
qualify.
qualified it.
Jesse, stop making fun of me. I don't want to scare anybody.
Yeah.
I hope I'm qualifying this. Again, it is about the picture that it says about you and the advantages that you took in what you took advantage of in school. Here's a good question. Can you also address what the scores 3, 4, or 5 mean or represent to colleges? Yes, I can. Typically, 4 or 5s will earn you placement out of a level. Sometimes for some colleges, a 3 will do that as well. 3 and up really means that you have demonstrated a college level understanding of this subject. And for some elite ones, they'll demand a 5 or something. But I earned college credit for my 4s and 5s. So it was as if I had taken a class at the school already. So I took a couple of French ones and I placed as a freshman coming into a 401 level French course. And there can be certain other prerequisites that fall by the wayside for you. There could also be other things that you'd like to show off. This dovetails actually into a question about where was it? I heard that we can withdraw our AP scores in College Board if we get a bad score. What is the advantage and disadvantage of that? If you don't like your score and if you don't want to show it off, like if you write a college application saying like, oh, I can't wait to be a biology major. I absolutely love biology. Biology is what I live and breathe. I've got this tattoo of Charles Darwin on sailing on the Beagle right here. Don't do that, by the way. But it's and you got a 2. That doesn't necessarily then marry that picture that you're trying to portray to colleges and universities. That's what I would say to that, right, Jesse?
Yeah, I think sometimes the issue is kind of an order of operations issue. What's going to happen is you and your application will list out your scores, and then if colleges want to follow up on that, they'll ask for a score report just to confirm that you aren't lying. But it's not like the first thing they look at when they open up your applications, they're going to look at this official piece of College Board paper that lists everything right away. Like it starts from the application, and then they look to see to confirm what you told them. So if you want to focus on your higher scores, then you focus on those in your application is what I would say. Yeah.
Where can you get practice tests for APs on College Board? Yeah, the URL is secure-media.collegeboard.org and type in whatever the course is. There will be a practice test there for you, or just Google College Board practice test. I think I know this person is interested in the APUSH. So APUSH exam. There's one from the fall of 2017 that they just keep up there. I wouldn't take it yet, though. I'd give the students like until March-ish, and then have her take it just as like a baseline, maybe a pulse check. That's the word I was looking for. Oh, I have a question. Can you speak about UK universities and AP tests? Yes, I can. If you are familiar, I'll say this one really quickly. So the UK specifically has completely different requirements, completely different system for students. You are not expected to study all subjects. You're not expected to sort of come in and necessarily give a liberal arts education. You are supposed to be able to come in and say, here's the subject that I'm applying to read, I'm applying to major in. So sometimes an offer at university will, you'll be notified about this beforehand, but an offer will be contingent upon a certain score on these specific APs and perhaps a minimum SAT or ACT score. But only once you've achieved that will you then be able to realize your place that's been offered to you at a university. So I assume anybody wanting to come to the UK is maybe interested in some of the elite programs out there. So that's how they do it. God, there's so many good questions. I think we did the dual enrollment. Are free response questions read and graded by only one or multiple graders? I actually had last year a panel of 2 real-life AP graders. They all get together in a room in, that year was Kansas City, Missouri. So chosen because it was centrally located for the whole country and nobody had to fly more than like 3 hours, 4 hours to get there. And they rent out a massive conference room and everybody grades these, one at a time. And it is one grader who will read yours. That said, it is quite well prescribed for them beforehand, the kinds of things that they have to look for. Like it really is a checklist of things that they're supposed to look for. So like I said, it can be really instructive for you to write an essay and then open up this thing that's given to the graders and try to grade it yourself. It is often kind of binary whether or not you did achieve something that they are looking for. Have a look at some of the example essays that are out there also on College Board. All right. As a freshman taking AP US government, with it being one of the hardest AP exams, says who? How can I prepare in a way to best set me up for success in relation to my lack of experience with APs? A noob AP, well done. Yeah, Jesse, what kind of advice would you give somebody that's maybe a bit more tailored for someone who is just starting their AP journey?
Yeah, it's so first off, congratulations. Nice work.
Yeah.
You've extended yourself as a freshman. Taking an AP class can be a very intimidating thing. Maybe one thing that we haven't said quite so much in this in today is like the exam's the end point when you're taking an AP class. The fact that you took the class, the fact that you were there all year long, the fact that you were putting in the effort, the fact, I mean, they can see, colleges can see on your transcript that you received grades for the fall and spring semester when you took that AP class. Keep in mind that like, you know, the final score that you get on the AP exam, it's one data point, it's a big data point, but it's not the only data point. And so I do feel like, you know, sometimes we can reach to this point where we feel a lot of stress about the AP exams. It's like, well, you've done a lot of the work already by the fact that you're in the class and you're working your way through it. My advice at this stage is do what your teacher's asking you, keep up with the work of the class, make sure that you are you know, motivating yourself to do well on quizzes and tests, assignments. And then as you start getting into January, February, March, that's when some of the questions that we've addressed today start to become a little bit more important. So if you're feeling like right now you're a little overwhelmed or like you're really extending yourself, just for now, focus on doing the work of the class because in most cases, with a well-structured AP class, if you do the work of the class and you apply yourself well over the course of the year, that is going to be your best preparation, at least early on for the exam. And then all this other stuff that we've talked about today kind of starts to come into play from that point.
I'll wind it down now. There's been a bunch of fantastic questions that we have not gotten a chance to get to, but the hour is up. I will package a few that I see as sort of a few, in particular one where my child's at a school where 30 plus APs are taken. At that point, that is a school that is deliberately offering a ton of APs. That is not a situation where a student is going to be disadvantaged for not taking all 30. To the other person who said about 10 APs, no, this is not, it's not that you have to bend over backwards to take every single AP that is out there. You want to demonstrate that you followed a rigorous course load, one that was still within your powers to manage. Like I said, I took 6 and I tried to demonstrate that I was good at what I did. Funnily enough, none of them were in history. But again, no matter the stage that you are at in high school, it is a stage where you can start to think about, is this subject something that I want to highlight, what I can do well? There's plenty of interactions of different things. You know, if you're interested in history, there are 4 history ones. There are 4 or 5 history ones. There's 3 that went nicely together. There are language ones. There are STEM ones that Jesse can talk to you about. So there are ones that commingle. But that you are, after a while, if you are taking all of these APs, and especially if you are sacrificing other things that also speak to who you are, and candidates for college and university, there is a point at which APs can detract. When if you are just studying, and I'm not sure that the 9 APs versus 10 APs really lets colleges and universities know anything more about you. But somebody who can take 8 APs and achieve quite a high level in music, now that does as well say something else. This, without knowing the specifics of anybody who's here, it's it is the APs, as I will rest by saying, they're wonderful, wonderful tools to help show colleges and universities who you are, and that you mean it, and that you are capable and ready, even now as a teenager, to tackle college level rigor. Jesse, is there anything else that I should add to that answer?
No, I totally agree. There's something that I like to say, and that's colleges don't admit a score, they admit a person. And so keep in mind that, like, no matter how many, through this whole process of test prep, whether it's the SAT, ACT, or APs, there's a tendency to try to feel like we're boiling ourselves down to a number, whether that number is a test score or a number of tests or any, that somehow that one quantifiable instant is the thing that the college is going to accept and want to have there. And the reality is that colleges are trying to accept people that are going to be there for 4 years, are going to be vibrant members of the community. You are a human being, you are not a test score. And so please keep that in mind as you're going through this process, that all of this that we've been talking about in terms of focusing on different things in your application, or talking about the things that are important to you, writing about those experiences in your essay, right? Those, you're trying to show on paper who you are in person, because that's what the colleges really want. So keep that in mind through this whole process. Try to keep a level head about you. I know it's hard. And then if you are feeling really stressed, ask for help, right? There's a lot of places out there. There's a lot of people out there that can help demystify the process and make this a little bit less stressful along the way. And we that's I think that's why we do what we do. I would say, more than anything else, it's just to try to help. So
thank you all very, very much for joining us this evening. I hope that we can continue to be of service to you. I hope that you'll continue to think about us. What college did you guys study in? I hope that you can continue to turn to us. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to chat with you. There's been some really, really good questions. And I'm happy that we answered as many that we did. I'm sorry that we didn't answer all of them. But folks, thank you very, very much. Jesse, as always, it's a pleasure to get to chat with you, mate.
yep, you as well, Ian. This is great. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.